Hi everyone, Sara Williams, CEO of Midnight Greenery here. Today we're going to cover the part 5 of this chapter, this journey here. This is going to cover Article 7 of Chapter 306, Regulations for Regulating the Marijuana Industry. These are proposed regulations, of course. So today we're going to cover a few pages of Article 7. This is the operating requirements for all marijuana establishments. So we're getting into the meat and bones of the business aspect of things, of helping you build a business plan around what will be required, security plans. We've got the licensed premises, we've got inspections, restricted access, a marijuana handler permit, what that might look like, security alarm systems, video surveillance, health and safety, waste disposal, certified scales, transportation, insurance, business records, and marijuana inventory tracking system. So today we are going to cover licensed premises, inspections, restricted area access, marijuana handler permit, security, and we're going to delve into video surveillance. So just the first 5 pages or so. Once again, the link is in the comments, the description area, so you can go ahead and download that, follow along with us for Article 7. So let's get started. So moving into section 700. So 306.700, licensed premises. So a marijuana establishment license will be issued for a specific licensed premise. So again, just like a liquor license, you're going to have to draw out and create a blueprint of where exactly you will be allowed to have a marijuana establishment. So is that going to be the cultivation facility? Is that going to be the retail store? Whatever that's going to be, you're gonna have to draw that out in a blueprint kind of a situation. Some of the requirements though for that premises: one, it's supposed to have adequate space for its approved operations, therefore growing, production, manufacturing, packaging, storing, all of that stuff. It's going to have adequate space for that. I'm not sure how adequate space will be determined, but we'll go from there. Be located and constructed to facilitate cleaning, maintenance, and proper operation. So, again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see as to how that really will be determined by the board. Next page, on page 2, top of the page, to talk about B, a marijuana establishment license must be posted in a conspicuous space within the licensed premises. So just as if you have a liquor license, a tobacco endorsement, a business license, you need to post it in a place that people can see it, that they know that you have one, that you're not just opening your doors, operating illegally outside of the law, but that you're licensed for that. C, a licensee may not change or modify the licensed premise without the written approval of the board. They may submit if they're seeking to modify, they may submit a request. That request needs to include a drawing showing the proposed change, evidence that the proposed change conforms to any local restrictions, and 3, evidence that the licensee has obtained any building permits or any necessary building permits for that. All right, so 306.705, inspection of licensed premises. So a marijuana establishment or an applicant for a marijuana establishment, apparently this falls under both already existing and a new application, shall, upon request, make the licensed premises, including any place for storage, available for inspection. This is an inspection by an officer charged with the enforcement of this chapter, and that may include a member of the board, the director, or an employee of the director of the board, is what that will include. The board may also specifically request that the licensed premises be inspected for local fire protection or by a local fire protection agency or any other state agency with health and safety responsibilities. So this is simply just saying that be prepared to be inspected. So run a tight ship, know that your stuff is that you're running a legit business here. You're running something that needs to conform to health and safety standards because you're producing a product that people are consuming. So again, health and safety, they just want to make sure you're not cooking meth right next door, right? We know that doesn't happen, but that's what they're looking for in that. All right, so B, inspection under this section includes inspection of the premises, the facilities, qualifications of personnel, methods of operation, business and financial records, marijuana inventory tracking system, policies and purposes of any marijuana establishment, and of any applicant for a marijuana establishment license. Now, I like that sentence except for one line, the business and financial records. That's really expansive. So what protection do I have as a business owner that the inspector is going to come in and they're going to go ahead and inspect my business, my financial records, and make sure I'm not, I don't know, laundering money, or I'm not, oh wait, this is a cash business. Anyway, that I'm not laundering money, that I'm not, I don't know, in some way business-wise. What's going to protect my my confidentiality of my business records? That inspector could go and be buds with some other establishment and say, hey, you know what they're doing over at Midnight Greenery? This is what they're doing. So where's my protection that this inspector is going to ethically not share my business and financial records with some other person, with some other company, outside of the board, outside of the director? That sentence really concerns me, because I understand, I guess I'm trying to understand now that, as Cynthia Franklin mentioned last night at the Marijuana Advisory Committee, she mentioned that due to the Cole Memorandum that it's okay that we have these marijuana establishment license. However, they have to be held to this strict standard of regulation. So as they build these, they're holding it to such a strict standard that this strict standard might make it so the legalized cannabis industry doesn't work. Maybe that's what they're trying. I don't know. Call me a conspiracy theorist. But if that's the case, is it so strict that they need to know my financial records? That they need to know what I'm doing business-wise? And what does that constitute? That business and financial records question. So I'd like to see some clarification there, or at least a line that says that inspectors or anyone inspecting can't share my personal business information with someone else. What's that? What's that going to look like? So then we move on to 306.710, restricted access area. A marijuana establishment shall restrict access to any part of the licensed premises where marijuana or a marijuana product is grown, processed, tested, stored, displayed, or sold. If there is marijuana in that location, it is restricted. Basically the case, right? So, except as provided in Article 3 for the retail store, each entrance to a restricted access area must be marked by a sign, right? Proper signage, restricted access area. Visitors must be escorted. So then, in this case, there's a sentence here, and I want to make sure this doesn't happen on the storefront side of things. But the marijuana establishment shall limit the number of visitors to not more than 5 visitors for each licensed employee or agent of the licensee who is actively engaged in supervising those visitors. Now, my assumption is that this only applies to the restricted access areas. So if you have, let's just say you have cultivation tours, right? You contract with a tour company, and there's tourists that want to see what a cultivation facility looks like. Happens in Colorado all the time, right? In this case, you would have to make sure that there is no more than 5 individuals touring your facility at a time per employee, licensee, employee, agent, whatever, per employee that is managing and supervising those people. So this is going to limit how many people is in access to a restricted area at one time that are visitors and not marijuana permit handlers people. As long as we ensure that retail spaces are built so that you could have 50 individuals in the store at one time, but they don't have access to restricted areas, then that's going to be key to make sure that we don't have that problem in the retail store situation or cultivation or whatnot for that. All right. C, section C, in that in a restricted access area, the licensee, any employee, and any agent shall wear a current identification badge bearing the person's photograph. So we all get to take pictures, and we have to have clip-on badges. A person under the age of 21 may not enter any restricted access area. Okay, any visitor to the restricted access area must, one, show identification saying that they're older than 21. They must obtain a visitor identification badge before entering the restricted access area. So this is going to put an extra cost on all facilities. An extra cost that's going to require a machine that can print you a visitor identification badge, right? Or some sort of a, I don't know, maybe a name tag, but I'm not sure. That's going to be an additional cost to have to make sure that the visitors have an identification badge. Also, this, I'm going to step back here, this section C where it says any agent shall wear a current identification badge bearing the person's photograph. Will that be provided by the state or the licensing agency that licenses a marijuana handler's permit? Is that going to be provided by them, or will that be another cost for the business to maintain? So what's going to be who's going to bear that cost is my question. 3 on that. So after obtaining a visitor identification badge, we do that. So 3, they must be escorted at all times by the licensee, an employee, or an agent of license. So if you're a visitor, you're not just going to be able to walk around. You need to be controlled in where you're walking, where you're going, all that kind of stuff for that. All right, so we move on to page 4. Page 4 covers the marijuana handler permit. Marijuana establishment and each licensee, employee, or agent of the marijuana establishment who sells, cultivates, manufactures, tests, transports, or who checks the identification of a patron, so a security guard, shall obtain a marijuana handler permit from the board before being licensed or beginning employment at a marijuana establishment. So it says to obtain a marijuana handler permit, a person shall complete a marijuana handler permit education course approved by the board, pass a written test, obtain a certificate of course completion. Okay, so it's just like a TAMS card, right? It's just like you have to sit through maybe an 8-hour class. This 8-hour class is going to cover these things. So it outlines what it's going to cover. 1, it's going to cover 1737 and 1738 in this chapter. So you get to learn all the rules and regs. 2, the effects of marijuana consumption. 3, how to identify a person impaired by the consumption of marijuana. 3, how to determine valid identification. 4, how to intervene to prevent unlawful marijuana consumption. And 5, the penalty for unlawful act by a licensee, an employee, or an agent of a marijuana establishment. So these are all things that you're going to have to be trained on, right, before you get your marijuana handler's permit, before you can be employed in a dispensary, cultivation facility, testing, any of that. Security, all of that stuff is going to require this. C, to obtain a marijuana handler's permit, a person must complete the course required. So then they will present a course completion certificate along with a person of interest report obtained from the Department of Public Safety. Now, as I go through this, I don't see anything where it says that there has to be a criminal history regarding a marijuana handler permit, that there's any type of a guideline around that, any type of a exclusion for that, any type of saying, well, if you have a felony within the last 5 years, you cannot have a marijuana handler permit. I don't see anywhere in these regs any guidelines surrounding that. So if they intend to make guidelines surrounding that, then there needs to be some additional added to that. Because when I got a TAMS card to serve alcohol, I didn't have to put in a person of interest report. So I don't know why the difference there. So something to look at on that one. So then the director shall issue a marijuana handler permit valid for 3 years from the date of issue. A person may renew the card by passing a test demonstrating an understanding of the course subjects. So the licensee shall keep the marijuana handler permit on the licensed premises during working hours. So it doesn't need to be on them at all times, but they do need to have access to it at the licensed premises at the time that they're working. Now, E says the board will review an approved marijuana handler permit education course at least once every 3 years and may rescind approval of the course if the board finds that the education course contents are insufficient or inaccurate. Now, those of you who are looking for a way to get into this industry and don't want to do a dispensary or don't want to do a cultivation or testing, this is an ancillary business that you could get out ahead on. If you can develop an educational course that covers these things and in true educational status really shows the consumption of marijuana, not the fear, not the reefer madness, but the true consumption of it, the true effects, the true how to see people, all of that stuff, those kinds of people, that's an ancillary business that will be needed. You know, absolutely. People are going to be paying a fee to get that card, and they have to get that card before they begin employment, before they are issued their license. They have to receive that card. So if you can develop that educational, you can be out far ahead and get licensed and approved by the board. You can get out far ahead of the industry in making money, because people have to come to you first before they can make money in that. All right, so that's E. So now we move on to 306720, security systems and lock standards. A, each licensee, employee, or an agent of a marijuana establishment shall display an identification badge issued by the licensed employer at all times. Oh, so that answers my question, right? So before, they have to have a employer badge with their picture on it. I was wondering whether or not that would be a cost put on by this marijuana handlers company, but instead it looks like it's an additional cost on top of the other cost associated with maintaining a marijuana establishment. It's going to be the business owner cost. So keep that in mind, that you're going to have to provide some sort of a pictured badge for your employees, right? B, the licensed premises of a marijuana establishment must have. So these are some of the security requirements. Now, Midnight Greenery has a partnership with Valkyrie Security Asset Protection. Valkyrie is valuable beyond their pay grade in providing security plans to really help you navigate this kind of a thing. They have helped us understand what all of this means. I called Larry Clark this morning and I said, hey, what does some of this mean? Is this really legitimate? And I know that he will be providing public comment throughout this process as well. But just know that security plans will be required as part of your operating plan. They will be required as part of your initial application. So work with your security, find your security people, have them help you succeed, and really put together a professional security plan. I really think that security will make or break your application. So if you haven't taken the time to really think about your access points, your cameras, your POS systems, where all of that stuff is going to be, what your resolution, your data processing, all of that stuff, that's really important stuff to think about in advance. And that will make or break, I think, your application when it comes down to it. So going over again, B, some of the guidelines regarding your security plan that will need to be in there is the establishment must have exterior lighting to facilitate surveillance. 2, a security alarm system on all exterior doors and windows. 3, a continuous video monitoring, which we'll talk about next. Marijuana establishments shall have policies and procedures that, 1, are designed to prevent diversion of marijuana or marijuana products. 2, prevent loitering. 3, describe the use of any additional security devices such as motion detectors, pressure switches, duress, panic, hold-up alarms to enhance the security of its licensed premise. 4, describe the actions to be taken by a licensee, employee, or agent when any automatic or electronic notification system alerts any local law enforcement agency or an unauthorized breach of security. Now, naturally, these are things that are going to be in your business plan. These are operating things that we have the time right now to create so that, again, you think about all that could go wrong and you have a backup plan for when it happens. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but come on, we know that things happen. So have the opportunity now to build these things, write them out, put them into that business plan, and increase your chances of getting a license. D, a marijuana establishment must use commercial-grade non-residential door locks on all exterior entry points to the licensed premise. Makes sense. Okay. Now we move on to video surveillance. And this section is going to be the difference, I think, between the mom and pop being able to just get in with their life savings and the big money being able to do this. So we'll talk about it. So Section A, a marijuana establishment shall install and maintain a video surveillance and camera recording system as provided in this section. The video system must cover, and then it goes on. I'm going to say video system must cover at a minimum, because there's some things in here that I would say go a little further on. Number 1, each restricted access area and each entrance to a restricted access area within the licensed premise. So camera needs to be covering entrance to those restricted access areas and anything that goes on in those restricted access areas. 2, each entrance to the exterior of the licensed premise. Okay. 3, each point of sale system. Now, what's missing here is scales. I think it would be really important to have some cameras over your scales to make sure that weighting that, let's talk about the point of a security system, right? It's to prevent theft, right? It's also to have, in the event of a, let's just think of a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is that the DEA comes in, because we're not yet federally legal, right? The DEA comes in and they try to shut you down, and they try to say that you're not following guidelines, you're not following the strict guidelines required by the Cole Memorandum, and they're gonna shut you down. Having really accurate video surveillance shows that your employees check ID, that your employees, weigh properly, that your employees don't steal, that you've prevented diversion, those things. And so your video surveillance is really important to protect your hind end on the backside of things, all pun intended. But so it does serve that. It serves that employee theft. It serves, in most cases, most of the people that I've talked to about their storefronts, they don't seem to be excited about having just marijuana lying around for people to be walking off with. But it could also prevent, I guess, against employee theft in that case, or for customer theft in that case. So video surveillance is extremely important. However, it is spendy. It's not cheap. So let's get into that. All right. So moving on. B, at any marijuana establishment, any video camera must be placed in a way that it produces a clear view adequate to identify any individual inside the licensed premise or within 20 feet of each entrance to the licensed premise. Now, really what they're looking for is a higher resolution, not necessarily 20 feet. When you think about 20 feet, if you're in a storefront, 20 feet is across the street and beyond. 20 feet is a long ways away. What's the justification for really needing to see that much space in front of you? I'm not sure if you need to see that far, but what they're really looking for more so, it looks like, is they're looking for higher resolution. They want a high resolution camera. With high resolution becomes more data and more data storage. Talk about that next. All right, so number C, or letter C, any area where marijuana is grown, cured, or manufactured, or marijuana waste is destroyed, must have a camera placement in the room facing the primary entry door and in adequate fixed positions at a height which will provide a clear, unobstructed view of the regular activity without blockage from lighting hoods, fixtures, or anything else. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to say, hey, we've modeled these off of Colorado, Washington, a mixture of the two. They're not perfect. There's some changes that need to be done, but here's some, regulations on how to do it, what they think is the right way for that. All right, now, next, D says surveillance recording equipment and video surveillance records must be housed in a locked and secure cabinet, lockbox, whatnot, and must be accessible only to the licensee, an employee, or to a law enforcement personnel, including the agent of the board for that. marijuana establishment may use an off-site monitoring service and an off-site storage of video surveillance. Now this is kind of what I like, which is why I like Valkyrie, is that Valkyrie is planning to do an off-site storage facility with off-site monitoring. This allows me that if the board has a question or the board has an issue that has anything to do with my cameras, they don't have to come to my facility. They can go to Valkyrie's facility and they can review that there. So I kind of like that for a sheer, I don't know, convenience aspect of things. Is a cost. Each surveillance recording must be preserved for a minimum of 40 days in a format that can be easily accessed for viewing. All recorded images must clearly and accurately display the time and date and must be archived in a format that does not permit alteration of the recorded image so that images can be readily authenticated. After 40 days, they may erase the video recordings unless the licensee knows or should know of any pending criminal, civil, or administrative investigation regarding the video would assist with. Now here's where the cost is something that requires high resolution, 20 feet, right? Something that requires high resolution to where you can see IDs, you can see faces of people. This isn't something where we want that liquor store camera where people come in and they get robbed and you're like, who is that guy? I can't see his face. I don't know. You want to be able to see their faces. You want to be able to see IDs to make sure that people are checking IDs and what IDs look like. You want to be able to see the numbers on the scale, kind of a thing with your video surveillance. So this is going to require some high resolution, which requires the number I got today. 40 days is 80 terabytes of storage. If we know anything about IT, terabytes is a tremendous amount of storage, tremendous. So not only is it going to cost about $100,000 at a minimum, maybe $150,000 just to get your camera set up in that high resolution quality, but there will be a monthly storage fee of that kind of data, of where it needs to be kept for that. So security will be a significant cost of running a marijuana establishment, for sure. All right, so today I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to end at page 7, health and safety standards. We'll discuss that tomorrow. As we get through this, there's a lot of things to think about. And once again, please be making your public comment. I don't care, if you're just a citizen and you don't want to actually run an establishment, your opinion still matters, okay? Because if you believe that cannabis should be legalized, this is the only way we're going to do it, is by making public comment and being a part of this process and moving things along. So tomorrow we're going to cover probably the rest of Article 7. I'm not sure. We'll see how long it takes. And that'd be that. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.